I'm so tired of the lamestream media. It's about time we get down to the real news. Get involved, get loud, and think on the brink. Well, we're back again here to talk about our economy, the big picture, what's happening in Europe, how it impacts us here in the States again. And joining me on the show here is Harry Dent Jr. again, Harvard MBA, an economist, and the founder of HS Dent. It's Malcolm Out Loud here. Let's get right back into it. And I want to talk to you, Harry, and let me start here because this is like, wow. I want to talk to you about where we're headed right now in our country. And let's see if you agree with these numbers, please, because you're probably a hell of a lot more on it than I am. But historically, over the last 40 years, as I understand it, our debt has averaged, our debt to our GDP has averaged about 38%, okay? And in 2008 was only at about 40%, which is hard to believe. It's hard for me to fathom that in 2008 it was only about 40%, which meant we were a pretty healthy country at that moment of time, I believe. Now, experts were warning that the economy would slow down to a crawl and serious risk would mount once that debt reached between, they say, 90 and 100%, and even 80% is getting very tricky, as you know, right? Yeah. So now let's take it further. The CBO, which is the Congressional Budget Office, folks, forecasts that the U.S. public debt right now is headed to 70%. 70% of our GDP in September, like right now, this year, right now. This ain't 10 years from now or 5 years from now, it's right now. And then what I'm understanding is still worse news, and this is crazy, but the CBO says that if we stay on the present track, as all the credit rating agencies have been warning over the past couple of years, when S&P dropped us, Fitch is just promising that they're going to drop us by 2013. They're all going to just drop and say, you know what, it's just not a worthy credit risk, obviously, which doesn't help anything out because it's not going to help interest rates out or anything else. But here's what I'm seeing. They're saying the national debt, and this is the CBO. And the CBO, by the way, let's understand that they're not partisan. They're an independent tank. They're supposed to be, Harry. I mean, that's what I always understood, right? I mean, so here's the news. Deal with it, right? So the CBO says that the national debt will hit 90% of our GDP by 2022. So we're talking within the next 10 years now, we would hit 90%, which now we're taking on water, of course, and approaches almost 200% by 2037 if we continue this program. And as you suggest, if somehow these two political parties continue to play their games and nothing else happens. These are just unbelievable numbers. It just floors me.
They're understated for two reasons. When they say percentage of GDP, the debt, they're not counting the government debt held by the government and government agencies for Social Security, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, all this sort of stuff. When you calculate that in, it's already a little over 100% of
right
GDP.
Now.
Right now.
See, I forgot that, actually, God, truth on it. But
and this is real stuff. Because if we say, well, that's not real debt, well, then Social Security is even more underfunded than it already is, and it's grossly overfunded. So this is real debt.
Wow. And nobody, but you're right, and I've reported on the show, now that you mention it, I've talked about the Social Security, the Medicare, the Medicaid piece of it. That's what you're speaking about. Yeah. So the debt of for instance, the debt of approximately trillion, right, dollars we're talking about is really the last numbers I seen, Harry, and you probably know better. I heard numbers somewhere, and I don't know if this is true, between 180 and 200 trillion dollars with all of these other things tied in there. I don't know if that's real.
Here's what we get. We get about 40 trillion in private debt. 3 times the government debt. You know, really, you know, like 16 trillion and growing in government debt, 2 to 3 trillion in local and municipal debt, you know, state and local. And then the worst part is anywhere between 66 trillion by 2 different private estimates and $82 trillion in unfunded liabilities for Social Security and Medicare out over the next several decades. So that's a longer term thing, but if you add it all up, we get more like 120, 130 trillion.
Okay. All right. So this is
8-9 times GDP. We've never seen this ever before, even close.
All right. So if you're paying attention here, folks, this is what I would call dire straits. So now you understand why I have to act like a lunatic half the time on the show to get your darn attention. And now Mr. Dent comes in, and you know we're having a civil conversation here. But now you know why. You know, you say, well, why you? You know, well, what the hell do you think? I mean, is anybody paying attention to the vault? I mean, it's like, you know, it's just
well,
forget
also,
it.
Europe. most developed countries have something similar.
Well, let's talk about that right now. That's exactly where I want to go a minute here, okay? Because this is like, wow. All right. So 17 of the Eurozone countries have increased their debt to GDP from approximately 80% in 2009 to over 85% now. But let's go through a few numbers for kicks and giggles here, okay? Greece, 142.8%.
After 2 bailouts.
Yeah.
They've gotten relief.
You mean bailouts don't work, Harry?
Yeah. Well, they'd be at 200% without the bailout.
That's why Europe ain't happy with Greece right now, man. They'd like to excavate them from the Union and shove them in the... So 142.8. And those are only the numbers we know. We don't even know the rest of the numbers, as you suggest. There's so many other numbers involved. That thing could be... God knows what else. I don't know. Anyway, so you got that going on. Followed by Italy, which is 119%, okay?
Yeah, we get 128, but close.
Okay,
yeah,
all right. All right. What the hell's a little bit, you know? Belgium, just approaching 100%, again, Belgium. Ireland, just over 96%. Portugal, which has been really in a problem area, and I haven't heard a darn word about Portugal, but I've been seeing it. And they're over 93% right now, by the way. Germany, 83%, and they're supposed to be one of the healthiest.
They're supposed to be,
I don't get it. I don't get it. You know, and everybody's looking to Merkel, of course, to do something. And she's like, she's the hottest thing out there right now. France over 81%, Hungary 80%, so on and so forth. And Spain is another problem. I don't even know what's Spain right now.
Well, they're 60% officially, but they push a lot of their debt down in regional government. We calculate about 90%.
I see.
So they're over the threshold.
There's been a lot of talk in Spain in the last few days. What's going on there?
Well, okay, here's what we say about it. Their government debt's higher than people think, but they had a massive real estate bubble and overbuilding. I mean, it's Germans and UK people, vacation homes, it's major investments. They have 79% of household financial assets and net worth in Spain is in real estate. It's like 40% here at most. So they went real estate nuts. The problem with the real estate bubble is there's a lot of debt around it, and it's hard to dig out of, as we know in the United States. The reason this recovery is so slow is because real estate got tanked. And if real estate doesn't come back, it doesn't matter how much money people spend at department stores.
We all lost a fortune in real estate.
Yeah.
We lost half. If your house was worth...
and there was debt behind it, though. When you buy something in a department store, you know, you buy a dress or something, it's not, you don't usually do it on debt.
That's right.
5 times leverage on houses.
I know, I've seen it. I mean, I got friends, people, myself, we all had, you know, if you had a house for $800,000, you're lucky if it's worth $350. Yeah. I mean, sorry, that's it. Banks don't want to hear you. And if you had a double equity on that, you're really screwed. Tied to everything else you can have, and forget the vacation or the holiday, you can forget about it. All right. With everything we just said, and if you're not pouring a cocktail by now, I don't know what to tell you, okay? But with all of this information that we're talking about right now, let's be real a minute. We talked about government already. You just gave an interesting scenario, which I appreciated, about what would happen, that we're going to have to bring this thing to a crisis. We're going to have to bring the politicians on their knees to say uncle, and then there's going to be something else is going to have to take place here, beside the usual business, okay? We know what's going on in Europe. We really can't control Europe. We can't even control ourselves. Everybody's saying, well, the United States usually helps Europe. We can't help Europe, man. Right now, the problem is...
Well, we're doing more than you think. There's a lot of under-the-table stuff
that we don't know, right?
Governments. It's unbelievable.
A lot of under-the-table stuff.
This thing together.
Fantastic. Well, we ought to talk more about that next time, but because I know you have the facts on it. But here, I'm hearing a lot about, again, China is doing a lot of befriending of Europe, of course. China and Russia are sleeping together now in a big way. So there's a lot happening out there that I'm seeing. And a lot of positioning with China. There's some very interesting things with China and Russia that are really sort of fed up with America being who they are. And I think you've got this whole shift going on, man, around the world. Would you agree with that?
Well, there's a huge shift long term. But China is not going to overtake our economy. They said that about Japan in 1989, and we said, no, Japan's about to head into a decade-plus downturn,
again.
And we're about to head into the greatest boom in history in the 1990s. Opposite of what economists thought. We look at demographics. China is aging. Japan already aged. Southern Europe is having a big crisis because they're aging. Now, we're aging too, but not as fast as any of those.
Well, you and I look good.
China is not. They're building up their military. They're not going to be able to afford to keep building it up. They've overbuilt everything in their society. Massive cities with nobody in them. Massive malls, nobody in them. Massive factories under capacity.
So you're not as concerned with China?
They're going to have a decade of austerity themselves. Now, they're still going to be a growing nation, but they are not going to be as big a power as people think. And they're not going to keep growing at 8 to 12%. Mark my words on that.
Okay. What can somebody do out here who knows that anybody I talk to says they can't control government? It's out of their hands, man. Everybody realizes that they're one person. Some people are even saying to me, I'm not going to vote because I don't like Obama or Romney and I'm not interested. And you can talk to them till you're blue in the head and it doesn't seem to change things. So my question is, what can the person out here do? What can somebody do? What do we do?
Can't change the winds, you can reset your sails, is what we always say. So this is going to happen. The government's trying to prevent this debt deleveraging, massive debt around the world, massive real estate bubble. Real estate needs to come down so kids, young families can afford a house again.
Right.
We need to restructure this debt. It's going to be painful. It's going to happen. So what you got to do is bet on deleveraging, which means you get out of stocks and commodities. You get into cash and safe stuff. If you're in U.S. dollars and all this stuff goes down, the stock market goes down and real estate goes down again, in another crisis, your dollars are going to buy 50, 60, 70, 80% more, just like last time. If you're in the U.S. dollar, if I was a foreign person, I'd want to be in U.S. dollars because it was the only major currency that went up in the last crisis. Everybody's saying, dollar's going to go down.
Right.
No, gold went down, dollar went up. Because when you build up debt like we did in the boom, you debase your dollar.
Right.
When you write down those debts in the bust, you actually destroy those dollars, make them more scarce, they come up in value. So you got to be in a defensive mode and say, look, I'm not looking to make returns, I'm looking to preserve my capital, wait for everything to fall again like in 2008, and then I can buy anything I want at 10, 20, 30 cents.
When will this be?
I think it's going to come between 2012 and 15. With the next 2 to 3 years.
No, next 2 to 3 years. So in the meantime, your suggestion, don't buy real estate now.
Oh my God.
God, no.
Everybody's saying it's bottoming.
Right.
It's temporarily kind of,
right,
then rich people are buying again. I'm slapping rich people I know and say, wake up, you're supposed to be the smart money.
All right. Does the euro make it or does the euro collapse, my friend?
It changes. It's still, even if it breaks, I think in the end into two zones, like the responsible countries and the irresponsible countries, whatever you want to call it.
That's right.
They're still better to band together. If you borrow and do things as a larger block, you're still more stable and seen as better. But it's not going to stay together the way it is. Either 3, 4, 5 countries are going to exit, the pigs they call them. And the problem is, if one of them exits like Greece, everybody's going to start worried about the other ones. They're going to pull money out of banks and it's just going to make it worse. Or Germany could just exit, revalue, or ultimately I think you split into two zones. You says, look, we got this zone that can devalue, this zone that revalues, and then you can go forward. Because there's two groups of countries that are in such different financial positions. Right. I don't see how you ever get them to agree on anything.
Harry, I just, wow.
But you don't want to be in the euro.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't think so right now. Definitely, it looks like a fair amount of doom and gloom in Europe. And interesting situation you're saying about the euro, but I think a lot of people do believe that collapse is inevitable right now. And we'll see where that goes. But you're right.
Same thing though. Out of a crisis comes something better. It'll come something better, but it'll take the crisis.
I like that idea. I mean, you're really right. We reinvent ourselves as people, and we certainly reinvent ourselves here. I could talk to Harry for days, and you could as well. We'll have him back again, obviously, talk more about it. You got to go get the book, The Great Crash Ahead. Harry S. Dent, Jr. Will be on the case again, of course. Harry, thank you, buddy, as always. Sure. Okay, it's Malcolm Out Loud again. Remember, get involved, get loud, and think on the brink. Welcome to the beautiful Renaissance Tampa International Plaza Hotel. Best courtyard, best lounge, best beds, and best service.